Welcome to Voice Rising with Kara Johnstad. Enjoy weekly conversations with leading luminaries, pioneering visionaries, singers, poets, musicians, and sound healers as we explore the profound role our voice plays on the path to self-realization and global enlightenment. The internationally acclaimed singer, composer, author, healer, recording artist, voice expert, creator of Voice Your Essence, and founder of the School of Voice, Kara Johnstad uses her extraordinary spiritual gifts to empower others. Everything in this world vibrates. Everything has a frequency. A pioneer in the field of voice work and transformational songwriting. Her breakthrough methods are helping thousands of people worldwide fine-tune their body-mind-spirit system and unlock the energetic frequencies of limitless creativity, health, and abundance. Share your voice, ask your questions, join in the conversation. Receive life-changing, positive transformation and rise together to create a sound world. And here's your host, Kara Johnstad.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Voice Rising. Today, I am in the studio with the best-selling author, social entrepreneur, and visionary, Dinan. Stephen is the founder and CEO of the Shift Network, a leading global provider of online transformational courses and training. And we are exploring the role our voice plays in transforming our world. Welcome, Stephen, to the show.
What a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me, Kara.
Stephen, I read you grew up in Duluth, Minnesota, a small town in northern Minnesota on Lake Superior, a town I do know personally. And for such a tiny city, a small city, I mean, it's not that huge. It is a good-sized city. But Duluth has been home to many artists, writers, and visionaries, including poet and songwriter Bob Dylan, actress Jessica Lange, writer Sinclair Lewis, to name a few. As a kid growing up in Duluth, did you ever imagine doing what you are doing today on such a global level?
Well, of course not. I think I had much more conventional ambitions. You know, I think that as a kid, it's like I went through phases of wanting to be an astronaut or wanting to be a professional golfer, and then just running up the next mountain, which at the time when I was in ninth grade, there was somebody named Scott Anderson who was kind of the star of the school and ended up going to Stanford. And I decided, I want to go to Stanford. And so I was just kind of mainly following the more conventional, ambitious path. I was mostly atheist in high school as well. I thought a lot of traditional religion just did not seem to hold up under scrutiny. So it was a bit of a turn to dedicate myself to work of transforming consciousness and evolutionary leadership and really showcasing many of the deepest, wisest spiritual voices on the planet.
Yeah, exactly. The visionary Werner Erhard, he said you can live your life out of circumstance or you can live your life out of vision. What do you think about when you hear those words? Because when I hear them, I think of your life.
Yeah, well, for me, I think vision is our North Star. The more we can crystallize a vision of possibility for ourselves, the more the universe conspires to help us create that. So the story of the Shift Network came to me in a vision in a meditation retreat. It was about day 3 of a Vipassana retreat. I'd sat many of these Vipassana retreats, and at a certain point, I just opened up to a powerful download is the best word I can call for or use to describe it, where really poured in this vision of a company that spanned the world, that interconnected people who were transforming themselves and transforming society. It kind of showed up first visually as little lights, interconnected lights all over the world, creating a larger grid. And a lot of detail came in over the next 3 days. I didn't sleep much and was really super inspired and daunted at times too, because I didn't have a background in business. I never really had any aspirations to be a business leader. And yet I just kept letting those visions come in and crystallizing and decided to write them up into a business plan and go for it. And so that it actually took a lot of twists and turns over the next 10 years before we even got Shift off the ground. I had one effort that had to go more or less belly up when I ran out of money, and then another effort that came under the banner of a nonprofit, the Institute of Noetic Sciences. But the vision for the Shift Network was my North Star through that whole period, and really clear that it was to be my life work. So I really feel that if we take the time, whether it's a vision quest or meditation retreat or shamanic journey or ceremony or whatever it is that opens our vision of what's possible for our lives, to tap into that and then to trust it, because there's these higher level visions come from our souls, and our souls have a game plan for this life, and there's a resolution of old karma and healing patterns that might have been going on for millennia, and there's also an activation of our highest gifts. And so a vision is a way to crystallize that into a form. And so when we get that crystallized vision, then we enroll other people in it, and not out of sort of any sense of manipulation, but that they have their own role that they've scripted to be part of that larger vision as well. So that's how, a visionary of one becomes a team of 4 or 5, becomes a company of 100, and eventually a company that is, thousands of people around the world who are helping to amplify wisdom voices.
Yeah, it seems like beautiful star constellations on Earth sometimes. If I look at projects, it's really like these lights that you're talking about. They come together and they gather and they make different formations, right? Some projects have 3 voices or 3 people, and other ones have 50 or 1,000. I was going to talk to you about I know for the Shift Network, 2020 was a very big year, and before that, in 2018, 2019. We had so many voices that were coming together. Here in Berlin, we had Fridays for Future, and they had marches all over Europe, and I believe also in the States with Greta Thunberg leading the way for climate, more consciousness for climate change. And then we had the Me Too movement. We had Black Lives Matter movement. Everyone was so excited. The voices were people were really coming together. And I remember that at that time, the Shift Network really was excitedly saying 2020, perfect vision. Let's bring all these visionaries together. Let's bring all these voices together. Let's amplify where we can be. And there were global meditations happening. And it was a very exciting, or for me at least, I remember 2019, you sense these visions being ignited from different places, Standing Rock, right? And then in 2020, a pandemic basically hit us on a global level, stopping so much momentum in some ways. How is it for you at the Shift Network, and also as a your personal journey through this last year, and how do you see the momentum continuing?
I think there's 2 parallel tracks that are happening right now. One is the birthing of the new pattern of human civilization, which is accelerating. There's a lot of exciting developments on all sorts of fronts. And then there's the hospicing of the old and the sort of the dying patterns. And in many ways, as visionaries, sometimes we can get too attached to just the transformational possibilities and not sober enough. And I'm including myself about some of what humanity has to go through to get there. So I see there was a keto teacher I had at one point, Wendy Palmer, who had told me, she said, I feel pretty good about myself. I've kind of become a 2x4 person. And I said, what is a 2x4 person? She said, well, you know how the universe works. First, you get the little tap on the shoulder, then you get the little whack, then you get the 1x4, then the 2x4, then you get the brick wall. And she says, I used to be a brick wall person. Now I'm a 2x4 person. So I thought it was funny because it's sort of like the metaphor is that we will take whatever wake up is truly required in the end. And I think last year was a very intense initiation, very hard for a lot of humanity, obviously, an incredible amount of suffering. And I think part of what it started to do is decouple us from some of the old patterns of how civilization works. On a simple level, it forced people into becoming more locally resilient than before, as there's supply chain breakdowns and they weren't necessarily part of the same system. So it pushed more people into online learning. We actually grew a lot last year, and a lot of companies that were offering things online grew. And so there was a way in which people connected with more wisdom teachers and practices. There was a ephemeralization of work, so not having to commute to offices and sort of figuring out how to do things in a more virtual and ultimately more sustainable way. So sometimes hardship does force innovation, and I feel like last year forced a lot of necessary innovations. And I think we're actually headed for another cycle this fall that may be just as difficult, if not more so, with the Delta surge and the potential fires in California. And, a lot of the climate change realities are really heating up. And the pathways to resolve these things are there. They're emerging. I've been advising a friend, David Gershon, on the Cool Cities Challenge, which is recently launched, and they'll have planning to have the first 3 cities in California get $1 million each for this grassroots infrastructure to go for net zero or carbon neutrality by 2030. And then they're rolling out to 25 the next year. And so there's this huge upswing around how do we rapidly decarbonize our economy. And then there's another friend that we're working with on how do we plant 1 trillion trees this decade. And we're doing a big event this fall that's aiming to plant 1 million trees, a big online music festival. So a lot of these solutions are scaling up, and they're having to scale up fast while these breakdowns and crises and calamities are happening in parallel. And I don't think a lot of the crises and calamities are entirely avoidable at this point. With climate change on the trajectory it's on, we've really decoupled from a lot of the traditional homeostasis of the climate. So we're going to be having a lot more collective challenges, and whether it's coronavirus variants or collective heat waves and fire season, it's like we're going to have to become disaster resilient and not use that as a way to shrink down and become more local or petty, or it's like we have to sort of expand into this global vision of potential. And the more we do that, the more we lay down the tracks to shift all of our automotive industry off of gasoline and into electric power and solar, and all these things are on a very rapid curve now. But it's going to be dicey for the next 2 years or next 2 decades, really. And so part of how we become resilient is that we have to anchor in a place in ourselves that is beyond whatever disasters and challenges are coming on the surface. We have to anchor in a kind of a soul knowing, and our vision of what we can contribute is part of how we create that North Star. So when we are anchored in that this is what I'm on the planet to do, this is my contribution to the larger shift on the planet, that starts to move mountains, and it inspires people and mobilizes people. And there's billions, literally billions of different visions for how people can be a contribution. And the more we get clear about ours, the more that we then join forces with the other people who are also building this new future in the midst of a lot of fairly precipitous times.
In your book, Sacred America, Sacred World, you talk about sacred citizenship. What are some of the values that we would carry or embrace as sacred citizens?
Well, one of the first principles of sacred citizenship is to see our role in the collective as a sacred duty. A lot of times people on a spiritual path have tended to see the public process as somewhat dirty and something that you want to avoid, and it's all corrupt, and why would I focus there because it's a bit of a buzzkill. But really, the place where we make our collective decisions for the future is in the realm of politics and governance and policy. So if the wisest among us forego participation in democracy, we're going to essentially defer that participation over to people who have less conscious aims. So I think it's imperative for people on a path of growth and development to sort of see their role as citizens of a country and ultimately a planet as part of their path, as part of their service. And so, get involved in lobbying, but do it in a way that's, there's like the Friends Committee on National Legislation does this really great lobby training that we've worked with them a number of times. And you learn how to lobby your Congress people. You learn how to get involved in encouraging and electing more conscious people into the process. We're also advocating for different policy changes. And so all of that, I think, is part and parcel of how we create a more conscious world, and not to see it as something separate. So I believe that our just as individuals have a higher destiny and a higher vision, that America and all countries really have their own higher destiny and vision. And I think it's coded already in what we've established. Things like e pluribus unum, out of many one. That's essentially a motto that points us towards oneness, that we are moving beyond separative identities to a more unitive identity, that we are one people, one human family, one planet. And I think America's highest destiny path is to lead the way to that by demonstrating that we can take people from cultures all over the world and all the languages and create a society that works. That doesn't mean we're there yet. We certainly have our problems and breakdowns and the ways that we're regressing. But if we orient around the higher mission of the country rather than just critiquing where we are, it gives us more energy, more power to make the shifts that are required.
I love that what you said about bringing the spirituality or our spiritual path, seeing it as a service to the collective. It reminded me when I was very young, I had read a book on Krishna, and I was very much a pacifist, and I was very shocked that Krishna was leading a war. And I remember reading, if there is to be a war, and I'm not saying now that I'm pro-war, but if there's to be a war, it's much better that someone who's enlightened or conscious is leading. And it's a similar thought to say, if we are going to have an election, or if we're going to have a school board, or if we're going to have committees, then it's better that the people that are maybe more studied or more conscious are not in the mountaintops sipping a green tea, but involved in the community process. So
think about getting one Dalai Lama into the White House and how much change that could create. And it's true down to the local level. If you have a mayor that's really enlightened and really does it, pioneers a new pathway, it leads to something entirely new. It's like Rwanda was one of the greatest genocides of the last 100 years, and now they have like more than 50% of their legislature is female. They're kind of becoming known as the Switzerland of Africa, and doing a lot of really enlightened things. And so if we get better and better, more to run and empower them properly, then we can make the decisions collectively that allow us to turn things around.
Fantastic. Let's talk more about visionary leadership when we get back from this break. I'm here today with Stephen Dinan.
The cutting edge of conscious radio. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
OMTimes magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organisation, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. Connect at omtimes.com. OMTimes, creating a more conscious lifestyle.
With happy clients all over the world, Kara Johnstad knows that your voice is the missing link to more authenticity, abundance, creativity, and health. An internationally acclaimed voice expert, Kara's breakthrough methods have helped thousands of people successfully heal their voice wounds and extinguish the story of self-doubt and shyness forever. Join in group trainings, attend online sessions, schedule one-on-one time, and invite Kara to work with your organization and community. Get started today. Go to www.karajohnstad.com and receive a special guided meditation designed to fine-tune your inner voice and welcome you on the voice journey.
This is Kathy Beal, host of Celestial Compass, featuring astrology you can use. Celestial Compass points you to what's going on in the sky and what you can do with it down here on Earth. We also explore fun, effective, and cosmic tools for navigating this adventure we call life. Join me the first and third Monday of the month at 5 p.m. Eastern Time for Celestial Compass. It's enlightening, entertaining, and empowering.
Coping-19, brought to you by CDC and the Ad Council.
If you're feeling increasingly lonely right now, you're not alone. It's totally normal. Even though we may not be able to get together in person, connecting virtually with friends and family still gives you a chance to interact with people and may help raise your spirits. Join a virtual book club, set up group text chats, or online video coffee breaks with coworkers.
Find more self-care and coping tips at coping-19.org.
Welcome back to Voice Rising. I am your host, Cara Johnstad, and with me in studio is Stephen Dinan. Stephen, the Shift Network is committed to shifting our culture and consciousness towards a healthy, peaceful, sustainable, prosperous world. You spoke a little bit before the break about your vision, and you do this really by amplifying the voices of wise teachers and change agents. What for you is the difference between what you call transformational education and what normal people would be booking if they go to a university or a college?
Transformation is really about shifting ourselves in a fundamental way, the center of gravity of how we make meaning, of how we orient to the world. So when you get more information, you could learn more information about how to fix a car engine, but you're not a fundamentally different person. You just have some more information about how to do something new. So most of our education really focuses on how do you evolve yourself. That means to become more of yourself, to live more of your vision, to heal things that are holding you back. I mean, you're obviously in the transformation business yourself in terms of offering pathway for people to transform their voice. So each of our programs, we're thinking about what's the transformational journey that a faculty member can take someone on. So they're moving from one way of being to another and opening some different dimension of themselves as a result. And the sort of on the broadest level, I think of this as aligning our personality, our outer personality with our soul, that our soul has a kind of a higher perspective and an agenda or dharma for this lifetime. And the more that we can open the channels of connection and communication with our soul so that we're aligning and truing ourselves with that code, then we actually become much more powerful change agents. So there's some unwrapping of the old layers and wounds and patterns that have been accumulated. And there's also an awakening of new possibilities and higher consciousness. And then there's actions, I think, that flow from that in terms of a higher contribution to the community collective.
When you talk about actions, what would you say to the people that I would think 99.9% of everybody aligns absolutely with love, compassion, being peaceful human beings, and yet sometimes they're absolutely tired and exhausted? What would you say to people that really want to make change and yet they're just tired of being confronted with a world that seems so harsh for them, and they're working 2 jobs and have 3 kids and trying to pay the bills? How can they become part of this evolutionary movement?
It's a great question, and I think it is difficult if you've got so many pressures on you just on the survival level to dedicate enough time to really lifting your aspirations or visions, and sometimes it can be difficult to get out of different circumstances. But what I think is sort of a baseline thing is to invest in your self-care, and self-care can be as little as set your alarm for 15 minutes earlier and have a deep meditation. That's free in the morning. You can also do yoga. There's a lot of things you can learn online that will just be kind of like free helps to you, working with your breath in a different way, dealing with stress in a different way. And part of what happens as people invest in growing themselves and their own consciousness, it also can open them to new possibilities and attract in different possibilities as well. It's not always like a snap of the fingers, but oftentimes, the more opportunities come to those who are more ready. And the more we prepare ourselves by investing in our own healing and growth, the more we're open to other possibilities. And I also feel that, as we said, it's finding a kind of a North Star vision for your life, because if you're just seeing yourself as essentially subsisting or surviving until death and trying to have some pleasure here and there along the way, it's going to be difficult to create a life that's truly one that you're excited about. So I think having a vision for the life that you want to create, finding the mentors and the teachers and the examples to inspire you to get there, because no matter what challenges somebody's overcome, whether it's quadriplegia to alcoholism to bulimia, there are plenty of people out there who have transformed that circumstance and actually lived a really vibrant life of contribution on the other side. Doesn't mean that doesn't mean that if you're quadriplegic you're going to walk again, but it does mean that you can have a high quality of life as a result of lifting your aspirations. So I think that they're just committing to a path of growth is a really important prerequisite, and also a path of like taking care of yourself on another level. So you might experiment with removing things that are distractions, or stopping sugary drinks, or stopping, engaging in alcohol abuse, or whatever it is that are ways that we often distract or numb or avoid what's underneath emotionally, and simply take practices to engage our deeper emotional reality. And then that sort of becomes a building block on which more positive changes can build. So I think that, a lot of the best spiritual technologies are not, there are available. You can learn Qigong online, basic Qigong online. You can do yoga online. There's a lot of the wisdom in the world is free. And then if you want to go deeper with any particular teacher, part of what we're creating is vehicles for people to keep going deeper and deeper and deeper. And then that allows you to, no matter where you are in the world, to engage truly wise teachers who can help activate a new paradigm way of living.
And I think you also do offer many summits and beautiful teachings where people can sign up and get a taste of where they want to go.
We've had over 3 million people participate in one of our free online events, and we've had just around 200,000 or so who have become paying customers. So, for those 2.8 million or more, it's probably more than 3 million people who just participate in free events, and they got value. They got something beautiful from that. And I think that's a great place to start if you're in really difficult circumstances, is start with the free offerings of Shift or other organizations. But simply looking at where you dedicate your time, it's like, watching a distracting TV show is generally not going to enhance your life over time. It's like to remove attention and awareness from the things that are not leading you to a higher and better you, and then to put the attention on the things and people that can really inspire you to live a better life. I mean, you can work your way through TEDx talks rather than sitcoms. There's a lot of things you can do to just simply invest in yourself, and that can be reading books as well. Reading often gets overlooked these days because reading has declined a lot in interest, but it's one of the best ways to exercise your brain and really expand your horizons. And you can buy used books for like 50 cents a book, and I think if we just take that attitude that everybody has within them the capacity to find resources and practices that can help them grow without a lot of investment of money, but it really is more about reallocation of time and finding those places where you can squeeze in some focus on yourself.
And some of the practices you can even incorporate, right? You can sing and dance in the kitchen while you're cooking. You can chant in the car. You can do breathing practices in a meeting with at work. You can use every opportunity to really see. It's like, how could this be more fun, more illuminating, more evolutionary? Yeah. Exactly. I think that's what's so exciting for me, and what I always share with all my clients is that singing itself, it's a free thing. It's free. Every child is moving, singing, dancing, creating, playing, whistling. People used to whistle all the time. I don't know what happened. It went out of fashion. It's an incredibly powerful way to do deep breathing and bring joy to the world. It's just to whistle while you work. Whistle while you, exactly.
And humming too. I've been hearing great things about the benefits of humming, and just kind of like a little bit of vibrational self-soothing that really helps us navigate the day in a more balanced and enlightened way.
Well, it's fascinating about humming because humming creates also something called nitric oxide in your body when you hum, and it's very good to fight inflammation. And it's I also had a guest on my show. He was talking about how humming can literally cure or reduce schizophrenia by 70%. I mean, that's incredible. 70%. John Boileau. I always say his name a little bit French, but Boileau, and amazing. And now with COVID, they are going to give nitric oxide to the people that have gone through it and are considered what we call long haulers. But you can create it naturally in your body simply by humming. So, I mean, you can go to a doctor's office, and maybe if that's what your doctor recommends, please do it. But the studies say that through humming, you can also change the chemistry of your body to better your immune system and boost your immune system and to heal. So it's phenomenal.
Amen to that.
Yeah.
Meditation, also great science around meditation, just great to develop a practice. Even if it's 5 or 10 minutes here and there throughout your day, it really just stabilizes things. It creates new neural pathways. You can create coherence. You think better. You can be more optimistic just with a little bit of meditation too.
Yeah. And all of these things, like you said, they are out there. So the first thing is to get in alignment with your vision, and then to start finding the resources that are available. And of course, at the Shift Network, you can continue to deepen those practices with great teachers. You also have, I saw this, you also have a world peace library. You are creating that peace movement for our world, and have top peace builders such as Dr. Jane Goodall. This is another resource. Archbishop Desmond Tutu, Amy Goodman. There's so many people that were in that library. I actually did not know about the peace library that you have created until I was researching for this show with you. And it's incredibly inspiring. Tell us more about the World Peace Library.
When I started the Shift Network, it was really the recognition that there's the pillars of the world that we want to create. One is peace, one is sustainability, one is health, and one is prosperity. And that you have to have people, if you have those four pillars, you have a very different world. And so peace building has been very central for us. We started with a peace week, and we developed a summer of peace, and we had literally probably 500 different peace builders from around the world, from people who are front lines in Israel and Palestine to folks who are helping to address historical wounds in Rwanda to people who are really working with gang violence in the United States. And we created a peace ambassador program that has had over 1,000 graduates of it. We've had many different events, and really kind of made that one of our kind of core commitments as a company to be a peace-building organization. So I think a lot of people do share the aspiration for a planet at peace, but the actual practice to get there can be challenging because there's a lot of historical wounds and hurts that need to be overcome. There's a defense industry defense industry that is sort of very makes a lot of money from the apparatus of war. And so it really takes a concerted effort and also practices from inner peace to interpersonal peace all the way up to international peace. So it's been something that we've invested in over time and really seen as a foundational shift for the larger world. And it's something that I think everybody ought to invest in their own peace-building skills, whether that's learning some nonviolent communication strategies to just cultivating a path, a practice of inner peace, and to see some of the societal wounded areas as opportunities for healing. I'll give an example from the United States right now. We have this deeply entrenched political polarization and animosity that's escalated to violence. And so how can we be part of healing those rifts? In 2016, I went to both the Democratic and the Republican national conventions and was trying to build more bridges and have conversations. And I'm a progressive Democrat by nature, but I have had some really interesting conversations with people who are more conservative. Republicans led to some interesting allyships. So how can we each be somebody who is helping to heal the political rifts in our country, which are tearing us apart right now? And then on the world stage, how can we be advocating, like as we have through our Congress people, not to be funneling more money into the war apparatus, but funneling more into the peace building apparatus, which actually is a better investment in the long haul. If you can prevent conflicts before they happen, it costs a lot less money, it's a lot less damaging for human lives, and it also gradually leads us to the world that we want to create.
Well, that is always the question, because I do think that, again, 99% of the people want to live in a peaceful, vibrant, thriving, healthy world, right? And so it's, why do we keep on getting in those cycles of division? For me, if I look at American politics, and I grew up in Wisconsin, I remember in Wisconsin, most people didn't talk about which party they voted for. My father always said that's a personal decision. I didn't really know who was Democrat or Republican as a kid growing up in Wisconsin. But still there was a respect for certain choices, that somebody was a little bit more conservative or somebody was more progressive. It just seems that our rhetoric and the language has become very hateful and very harsh. And how do we, I mean, you spoke about nonviolent communication. How do we build those bridges when we're not even listening to each other? Does it really start with that one person choosing to deeply listen to the other person?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the work that best work in transpartisan circles has been built around small listening circles with a certain set of agreements that really get people into the personal stories rather than policy arguments. There's an existential threat that people feel when somebody's going to exert power over you, and if you don't feel that they're going to do that in a trustworthy way, then that tends to escalate into animosity and even violence. And so getting beneath the sort of the policy or the sort of the fight on the surface and getting into what's the personal backstory. So Joan Blades, who was one of the co-founders of Move On, has done a lot of great transpartisan work, and they've focused on things like gun control, like as an example. Like I'm generally would like to see fewer guns in the world, but if you start with like what was your first, who taught you how to relate to guns and growing up? And oftentimes people will be like, oh, and then you get a whole backstory about how grandpa taught somebody how to shoot a rifle, and they felt so much pride when they first killed their first deer, and it fed the family, and it kind of felt like they're providers. And so it gives a whole different backstory and context for why somebody might have a different relationship with guns than we do. And so when you kind of dig beneath the personal, the political and the policy level, or the fights, and you sort of get into like what is people's real lived experience, and understanding that often creates a different kind of rapport or bridge. They applied some similar work to climate change issues, and they found is that they got people on the left and the right, the national level, and people, you didn't necessarily change all their positions on the surface, but they would start taking family vacations together. And so that personal glue is really important part of being able to transform dynamics that get really can exaggerate into violence. And most commentators these days have said that the United States is just really on the precipice of wide-scale violence because of the level of political polarization. So we want to be conscious about not adding to that, and doing things to help to ameliorate it and help heal it on a one-to-one personal level.
Stephen, we're going to take a very short break, and then we're going to be back with more.
bringing a more conscious lifestyle to your world. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Ascending Hearts is no ordinary dating site, but a spiritual dating site with a purpose, to link you with your soulmate. We engineer the serendipity so you can trust that you will attune with someone that has the same matching vibration as you. Ascending Hearts, the conscious dating site for the spiritually aware. Try Ascending Hearts for free. ascendinghearts.com.
Life is a flow, and enlightenment is simply harmonizing with the way life really is. Then you find that life is effortless, benevolent, and free of all suffering. Hey everyone, this is GP Walsh, and I want to invite you to my brand new radio show that's launching right here on OMTimes Radio called The Flow of Enlightenment. I've been a spiritual teacher for decades, and my greatest pleasure is being able to share with you these deep and highly practical spiritual ideas. So join me in The Flow every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Eastern and let yourself be transformed.
The United States has the highest rate of incarceration in the world. At the Equal Justice Initiative, we believe mass incarceration has to end. There is this presumption of dangerousness and guilt that gets assigned to Black and brown people. We have to confront our history of racial injustice and commit to a new era of truth. There's something better waiting for us, something that feels more like freedom. Truth can inspire change. Please learn more at eji.org.
Welcome back to Voice Rising. I am your host, Cara Johnstad, and with me in studio is Stephen Dinan. Stephen, effective storytelling is a key skill for successful leadership. What role does storytelling play at the Shift Network, and what role do you think storytelling plays as we rewrite our stories and create communities that are really designed to be what we want them to be?
Well, I mean, first of all, it's a funny question for me personally, because I tend to be a little bit more of an abstract thinker and like look at patterns, and I don't naturally tell a lot of stories. But as I started to speak more publicly, my wife would always be like, "What's the story? What are the stories you're going to tell? What are you going to use to illuminate your points?" And I went on a tour for my book, and every time I was just like, "Okay, I have to make sure to tell all the stories," because it wasn't necessarily my go-to move. But it is how humans learn best. And so when I told the story of, my Aikido teacher and the 2x4, that'll probably stick in people's minds much more than other principles. And so I think the reason why we learn from stories is because of the way our brains are wired, is that we learn from observing the world around us. And when we hear a story or see a story depicted, it imprints on us as a living true reality rather than just an idea or abstraction. And so when we can learn to tell stories and mine stories from our own lives for their insights or the golden nuggets, that's going to be much more powerful. So like when I would be talking about bridging left and right with my book, so The Sacred America, Secret World, when I wrote it, I was really trying to bridge left and right political dynamics and orient people around a shared aspiration for humanity. What are the deeper spiritual principles for how America can evolve to the next level? And I often would tell the story about my father-in-law, who was a sort of a rock-ribbed Republican and thought I was a New Age wimp when we first connected. And so early on, I gave the example. I said, when I first started getting into business, and I said to him, would you mentor me in business? He says, no way, you're too much of a wimp. And so instead of just, cowering from that, or I just laughed and I said, well, what would convince you that I'm not too much of a wimp? And so he thought about it a little bit. He said, if you can survive 3 months of mixed martial arts, of street fighting, I'll mentor you in business. And so, there's more to the story. So I went to mixed martial arts for a few years, actually, and I've moved up to belt levels, and it was fun. It was interesting. I got a little beat up, but it was fun. And so that actually led to some of the skill building. He introduced me to a company he had invested in, and he ended up sort of mentoring that. So it ended up building some core skills and capacities for me to eventually be able to launch the Shift Network. And so the deeper lesson for me was sometimes a more conventional, tough business guy perspective was valuable. It helped me be able to weather a lot of storms and ups and downs and make difficult decisions. And in a very real way, he had an impact on me. So I think when that story sort of illuminates that there is a complementary virtue, if you will, about even things that we might not naturally gravitate towards. And that, part of the business leader I am now was also a gift from somebody who is a lot more sort of tough Republican in their worldview. He's no longer on the planet, and we got to have a great relationship. He used to call me Stevie, which was his fighter name for me. and so, so this sort of, peace building, wisdom seeking new age wimp, it showed enough that I could dance enough in his world that he'd feel confident I would do well with what he had to share. So, anyway, I think that's being able to tell that story on tour would open up always was funny, and people would laugh about the things I would say, but it would really illuminate some of the deeper points so that I was trying to get across about how conservative and progressive worldviews are more complementary on a deep level, and that if we can learn and integrate each of their complementary truths, we're going to be stronger people and stronger leaders as a result of it. So if we simply just demonize the other side, we're not going to learn and integrate the virtues that they have.
What was the story you used to tell yourself that you rewrote in the last years and gave it a different ending?
There's a little bit. There's a story I've been rewriting around money, and I grew up fairly, very middle class. My parents were not business people; they worked for the city and the school district, and we never really had that much money. And so I was going to have to work for my own money, and was very middle class in my psychology. And so when I first, got to the level with the Shift Network where we needed to start approaching investors and all these people who had lots of money, and I frankly felt a little intimidated, like I was sort of like not in my ecosystem, if you will. And I've been just rewiring that and just seeing how, more resources gives more ability to shift things. And so if I respect that people have been entrusted with money for whatever reason, and that if I can help them evolve how they're directing that so that it's going towards the greater good and that it's part of a new brand of conscious capitalism, then that's great. And to not sort of be intimidated by people who have more financial means, and that I can sort of see myself that way. And so that was a bit of a paradigm upgrade that I had to go through in the realm of business. And since my parents' only investment growing up was in an oil well, which turned out not to exist. So they basically got swindled. And so that was it for their entrepreneurial endeavors. They were just like, let's just make sure that we've got safety and security with the city.
Well, they probably did invest in education, right? I'm sure your parents invested in education and making sure that you, had a college education and probably had access to.
They
books,
very much they believed in that. They did very much invested in that.
Yeah.
So that's part of the Shift Network is invest in your own education. It's like expose yourself to the best and the brightest. Things that I was a little dismissive about. My mom was always big on the networks and who you associate with and growing up. And now we have the Shift Network, and it's a giant association of very wise people around the world to associate with and learn from and grow from.
Well, that is one thing when everything, we were talking about, the possibility of wars or losing jobs. Nobody can take your education. Nobody can take your consciousness away from you, right? Even if you have one set of clothing and you don't have a job, you still have your heart and your mind and your thoughts and your wisdom. And I think that is why education is very important. That is something that you keep forever. How you what you involve yourself with in life. Yeah,
and I think it like quite literally is forever in the sense that I do believe that we do not die with our physical death, that our consciousness lives on. There's plenty of interesting research and avenues that show that, and we have, everything. We have people who teach mediumship skills and communicating with the other side and creating actual, getting real evidence that that's real. And I think that when you start to see it that way, that, all of our physical stuff is going to drop away, but what we do with our consciousness is going to endure, not just for this time we have on the planet, but perhaps for many, many lifetimes to come. Then it becomes a primary place that we want to invest, because everything else flows out from that. The kind of partner we're going to attract, the kind of kid, the kind of parent we're going to be, the kind of business person we're going to be, the kind of opportunities we're going to have. People tend, the clearer and more conscious you are, the more people want to do things with you, and that's just going to lead to lots of benefits.
Lots of benefits. I wanted to talk quickly about unity in diversity, because you're together with a singer, as far as I know. We know from voice that it's phenomenal. We have thousands of different voices, and yet, for example, in a choir, you have thousands of different voices. They come together and they unify, and they're in harmony into one voice. So the voice definitely is something that has unity and diversity. I think also at Shift, you talk about wanting to involve the entire human family in your decisions, respecting people's differences, respecting diversity. In which ways are you making this happen in our world, that we can really see a tapestry of diversity and yet it still has a united vision?
Yeah, so we've made a much more concerted commitment to this area in the last year. In particular, we did a lot of we did a whole series on transforming race after the George Floyd murder. We hired a chief inclusion officer, and she's working on the Race Project. That's a long-term effort to heal racism at the roots and to really eradicate racism on the planet. So we've been, much more proactive in hiring more diverse people, and we're still a little bit, we're still too white, frankly, as a kind of a new paradigm organization. It's sometimes a little bit difficult to become fully diverse, but we're getting better and better every year, and we're making real commitment on diversity of faculty and diversity of speakers, and really making solid progress, which I feel good about. We've done a number of programs with Derica Blackman that are all about creating spiritual allyship and plans for healing racial injustice. And so it's a process, it's a journey. It's not like you can say we're done or cooked. It's like, but for us to embody the unity and diversity principle that is one of our core values, it's something that we really feel strongly has to be a part of our framework for both internally and externally for impact. Because ultimately, I think what we're shifting towards, or we're shifting from a sense of separate tribal identity, where we're kind of mainly connected to in a heart and soul way with our people who think like us or believe like us, to really approaching life as a one human family. Like that's at the root. If we can become one human family on this planet, we're gonna take care of the earth. We're gonna take care of each other. We're gonna cut down on war. We're gonna eradicate extreme poverty. We're gonna get clean drinking water for everybody. We can build this civilization that is truly worthy of the beautiful gem of a planet that we've been given. But it comes down to we have to care. We have to care and be connected to all of our fellow citizens of this planet. And that's a movement of the heart, mind, and soul to include more people in what we care about and who we care about.
Beautiful. Stephen, we're coming to the end of this show. I know you know about quantum physics and the 100 monkey theory. It is literally possible, if we align our voices and set our intent, that these shifts can happen quicker than we ever imagined. Where would you like our world to be in 6 months from now?
I feel like the most important thing we can do is to activate a commitment collectively that to reduce our carbon output to carbon neutrality by 2030. It's bold, it's crazy, but I think we need a moonshot level of commitment to reduce the carbon neutrality. And that's why I'm investing on a couple of different fronts in that direction. I think if we can do that and just simply, as JFK had said, we need to put a man on the moon. It's like we need to draw down the carbon on this planet and shift over the economy super fast, or else we're going to have to live through hellacious thing after hellacious disaster. Mm-hmm. And if we can do that as an act of consciousness and care and solidarity, I think that we will harvest many beautiful things from that. I think that's the probably biggest thing that we have to do fast.
Beautiful. For everybody out there, theshiftnetwork.com, that's where they can get more information of your work. I mean, it's only a sliver of your work. I believe you do so much more. But thank you, Stephen, so much for being on the show today and sharing your vision for this world. And yeah, let's decrease our carbon footprint and let's have peace on earth. Or like we say, on earth as it is in heaven, right?
Amen.
Exactly.
As earth as it is in heaven. Beautiful. Well, thank you for having me on.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.